Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe has been out for almost 6 months, and I can't stop thinking about the game. So to keep the ball rolling, today I'm going to be ranking all 26 normal and 5 super copy abilities in the game. I'm wanting to do a video as such for quite a while now, so now that the game is actually out, now is a better time than ever to do it. As always, these will all be my personal opinions with the rankings, so if you agree or disagree, just be sure to sound off in the comments below. I look at every single one and it honestly helps this community grow. In regards to the formatting, I'll be listing tiers S, A, B, C, D, and F, starting at the very bottom with F tier. F represents abilities I hate, D represents abilities I dislike or don't enjoy to play, C represents the middle of the pack, being abilities I don't like but don't dislike, B represents abilities I enjoy that I don't mind using, A represents abilities that I love to use a lot, and lastly, S represents the abilities I adore, and that are my personal top 5. Got 31 of these guys to cover, so let's get started with the worst. And as always, thank you all for watching. Starting the list off, we've got Sleep. I hope this comes to no surprise, as it's really not anything all that special. There are some diehard Sleep defenders out there, and, you know, power to you guys, but I'm not on the same train as you. Sleep solely exists to troll the player. It has 0 moves, and is only placed to purposefully trap or to annoy the player. At least in Forgotten Land, it healed you, but it doesn't even do that here. That's why it's at the bottom. I don't like this ability. I understand its symbolic significance to Kirby's 30th anniversary, which, you know, is cool and all, but this is just another screen wipe, and we already have Crash and Mike. Plus, the screen wipe effect doesn't do a whole lot either, besides turning enemies into stars and food. I'm just not the biggest fan of it, and it seems that they shoehorned it in from Star Allies just for the sake of the anniversary label. As you might learn very shortly, I'm not huge on the screen wipe abilities. Crash is the same as Festival, but it's much more explosive and flashier. You can charge the ability too, which is a bit nice. The only reason this is placed above Festival is because it's a classic ability that's been in the series since Adventure. If I had my time back, if I was like regrading this tier list, I probably would have switched both of them, but I just have such a strong distaste for Festival that kind of merits Crash to be in D tier. And yeah, that's all for Crash. Leaf slides in at number 28 as one of the weaker abilities out of the bunch. It looks nice, but in reality, it's just a weaker and slower version of Tornado, which is a much better ability. Leaf is a nice ability to obtain early on in Cookie Country, but gets easily overshadowed by Sword, Fire, and Cutter for being some of the more beginner abilities, and it's completely replaced by other abilities found later in the game. So, sorry Leaf fans. High Jump is cool in concept, but it doesn't feature anything interesting to its moveset. It's only used for 2 or 3 levels in the game really, and it's only given to you during vertical sections that would take you much longer to hover through. The most use it gets in my books is the challenge room dedicated to it, as that utilizes everything the ability has to offer, despite having 2 moves. Like I said before, High Jump is cool in concept, it's fun to use at times, but there are other abilities that are far more amusing to use compared to it. Just like Festival and Crash, Mike is another screen wipe ability. Mike is my favorite out of the 3, despite being placed so low on the list. Only because I think it's the most unique out of the 3. Mike has 3 individual blasts that you can use in succession, with the last being chargeable. Like Crash, it's one of the classic abilities, first appearing in Adventure, and receiving an upgrade in Superstar. It's the coolest of the 3 screen wipes in Return Deluxe, plus this Mohawk adds style points. The final ability of D tier is Bomb, and this may come to somewhat of a surprise, but I find Bomb to be boring. I don't hate this ability, don't get me wrong, but after playing it in the past 4 2D Kirby installments, I just don't seem to enjoy it as much as I thought I used to. Honestly, I think I enjoyed it more in Forgotten Land alongside its 2 upgrades. It can be fun during boss fights where all you do is hold run B and bowl your bombs towards enemies, but unfortunately, that's the most enjoyment I'll get out of the ability nowadays. Now, hear me out. Stone is dope. It's a unique ability, but I really hope some of you can agree with me that it's not actually that dope. I find a lot of people will hype this ability up solely for its transformations, and in reality, I think that's all it's good for. Stone has the same flaw as high jump for me, being that it's only sometimes enjoyable to play as, which is exactly why it's placed at the bottom of C tier. I love the ability conceptually, but its only flair is the Easter eggs present in the down B transformations. Funnily enough too, these blocks here could only be broken by stone or hammer. But thanks to Sand's down B, they can also be broken, making stone slightly more useless now. Needle to me shares the same flaws as Leaf. It's a really good beginner ability that's given to you in Cookie Country, but is easily overshadowed not long after. Like how I compared Leaf to Tornado, I find Needle to be comparable to Spark. For both abilities, you hold B in a static animation that leaves a hitbox surrounding Kirby, to which you can shake to create a bigger hitbox. Both abilities can be found early on too, and I think that like Leaf, it gets easily overlooked and replaced by Spark, which is a far superior ability. Needle can be fun at times, especially early game, but that's the only time it'll shine for me. Wing is an odd one for me. I've really debated putting this one lower, as before this remake came out, I wasn't too fussy on Wing to be quite honest. In Triple Deluxe and Star Allies, I caught myself never using it often enough. However, when I played through Return Deluxe, I took more of a liking to it, gaining its position from probably D to C tier. The thing that changed my mind on the ability was its challenge room, as it showcases all this ability has to offer. And Wing is a difficult one to master, which makes me speculate if the difficulty alone is the reason a lot of players dislike it. Overall, it can be a blast in stages from Nutty Noon, where you're soaring through tall vertical stages, or through long horizontal sections combining Dash B midair with Combo Bomb and Condor Dive. It's enjoyable, but difficult to master. Some may think this should be lower, but I don't care. I think people are sleeping on Parasol. It may not be the best ability, I know, but it's not as bad as some may think it is. Playing through Return Deluxe shined a new light onto it for me, especially when I was recording the copy ability video. This ability may not be the best damage outputting ability, or strong against bosses, but it's still good if you're dashing past enemies or beating up sub-bosses. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's the best in-between ability. What I mean by that is it's the best ability you can use for sub-bosses, or enemies as such, before you pick up a stronger ability. If you're faced with getting Parasol, or one of the weaker abilities in the game, like Leaf, then I would choose Parasol. Grand Hammer, our first super ability. Out of the 5, I feel this one is the weakest. Not in regards to strength, no, not at all, but just overall, I guess. None of the supers are bad in any way. In fact, I think they're great, but Grand Hammer is the weakest link in my opinion. Great concept, great stage elements for you to destroy, especially this one from 7-2. But sadly, I quickly get bored of using it and find myself wanting to get to the portal as fast as I can more than anything. And to continue that same train of thought, we have Snowball. I don't really have any qualms or distaste with Snowball, I just wish it was used more, as it's a very fun super ability. Transforming and shaking your controller, watching Kirby soar in a giant snowball is just awesome. I'm not certain if this was changed from the original, but sometimes it feels harder to control in the remake. This could just be me, but when I played through the remake, it felt difficult to control at times. I don't know. For a final note on Grand Hammer and Snowball, both are fun supers, just wish they were used more, though I undoubtedly enjoy the other 3 more. And here's Monster Flame. This is the final ability in C tier, and its placement here makes the most sense for me, as it's the best out of the 3 mid-tier supers, and the ability I enjoy the most out of everyone listed in this tier. There's a satisfaction throwing these flaming dragons, burning whatever's in their path. It's such a simple ability too, barely any puzzles with it, so you can just keep walking to the goal. I find its finishes are also so destructive compared to the past 2, like sections with the tree in 1-4 and the octopus from 3-3. And that concludes C tier. Starting off B tier, we have Whip. The reason for its placement is because it's an ability I see myself using often enough to garner a liking to, meaning it makes its way out of C tier. Whip is a slower ability with little to no movement options. Its damage isn't high, but the combos you can make after charging B, holding an enemy close, then sending them in one of 4 directions is super satisfying. It's comparable to Parasol and Bomb in that sense, as you can kinda do the same thing. Also, down plus up B, Whip Tornado, is the best move in this kit, easily. It's just super amazing. I've always seen Cutter as the second main ability alongside Sword. Like, when I think of copy abilities, the first 2 that come to mind are Sword and then Cutter. And Return to Dreamland definitely set that picture in my head. Cutter is the next equivalent to Sword, but more versatile, as you can throw the blade and it comes back to you like a boomerang. It's used in some puzzles that require you to throw the blade at a certain angle, which makes it slightly more unique compared to Sword's puzzles. The only reason it's this low is because if I were to choose between Cutter and Sword for a melee weapon with similar properties, I'm choosing Sword. Yo, Magalore, what are you saying? What is this guy saying? So, this is a checkpoint which basically signifies that you are roughly halfway through this video, and I would just like to say thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying the list. Roughly 99.8 of you aren't subscribed, so if you're enjoying today's video, then feel free to hit subscribe. It honestly means a lot. And at the end of your day, you can still change your mind. Either way, your feedback is greatly appreciated, and I think this guy would also appreciate it too. So let's get back to the video. Shout out to my buddy Brisky_business, as this is his favorite ability. Sorry for putting it this low, man. Tornado is one of the most agile abilities Kirby has access to, both for vertical and horizontal movement. While in Tornado form, you can shake the controller or move the analog stick back and forth to charge a small blast, which was a nice addition to the moveset. I don't use it often, as it's a pretty situational ability, but it's still a blast to use nonetheless. Flare Beam was pretty close to joining the other 3 back in C tier, but thankfully Return Deluxe rekindled my liking for this one. I think with the remake, they made the beam itself easier to control, which was a much needed fix from the original. And honestly, I think that's the reason for its placement in B tier. The segments with Flare Beam are great, despite not even controlling Kirby, and the design is super sick. Ah, Spear. I've always loved Spear. The best thing about this ability, compared to other melee weapon ones, is just how versatile its moves are. You can throw the spear multiple times midair, or charge it to throw multiple at once. My favorite move is holding B, letting it charge, then propelling into the air for a short while. Spear Copter. This move alone is why Bandanity was my go-to pick in multiplayer. It's just so much fun. Fire is a staple for Kirby copy abilities. Probably the most iconic and recognizable alongside Sword and Hammer. It's got some of my favorite horizontal movements for any ability through Dash B referencing Burning Kirby and Dash Down B covering a lot of ground. Damage wise, it's also super strong. Putting it up against sub bosses completely melts them, but my favorite will forever be the quick kill on Wispy. Screw that tree. Fire is usually a must pick up whenever I see it, especially in the earlier worlds. Beam is on par with Fire. I just love these abilities. Being on the same page as Fire and Cutter, Beam is one of the classics. An easily recognizable ability, both for its appearance and its moveset. I love spamming the hell out of mid-air dash B. That barrage of beams is just so much fun to use on bosses. That, and the move names just sound cool as hell. Wave Beam, Cycle Beam, Revolution Beam, just super sick. Now, although as much as I love these, they're not as good as what's to come in A tier. Closing off the 5 super abilities, we have none other than Ultra Sword. I know all supers are pretty basic in concept, as all you do is press B and it clears the majority of anything that stands in your way. But Ultra Sword just feels good to use, you know? Every time it's used, you can feel the power behind every swing. There are multiple swords that appear too, just like how Stone's transformations work, which only adds to its unique flair. But the part that seals the deal for me is its placement in bosses. You use Ultra Sword as the final blow for Grand Doomer, Magalore, Grand Doomer EX, and Magalore EX, and Magalore Epilogue if you're willing to count it. Those cinematic moments, and how impactful those final strikes are, is what pushed Ultra Sword above its siblings and into the beginning of A tier. Ice was an ability I would rarely go near unless necessary. I'd use it in the opening stages of White Wafers for the sake of ice-themed world plus ice ability, as well as when it was required for completing some puzzles, but the main reason this made it into the top 10 was because of Ice Ball. This move, to my knowledge, wasn't present in the original game. So I did some research on it, and according to the Kirby wiki, it was in the original and was also present in Robobot and Star Allies. So I've gone 11 years not knowing about this move. Either way, I spam the hell out of Ice Ball because of its speed and invincibility. So now, oddly enough, I love Ice a lot more than I used to. And it's all thanks to one move I never even knew existed. Good job, X-Sword. Ah, yes, the tried and true sword. Undoubtedly the most iconic copy ability. You can't go wrong with this ability. It's good at movement, both horizontal and vertical, good damage-wise against any enemy, just great overall. It's the ability with easily the most moves in its kit. And to make things better, in Return Deluxe they've added moves such as Sky Energy Sword and Twister Slash from the 3DS games to add even more to Sword's moveset. And Twister Slash is a devastating move. It's as iconic as it is for a reason, so if you see this ability, you use it, no matter what, as it's great on all measures, usually, that is, unless one of these next 7 show up. If you don't like water, then there's something wrong with you. This ability has gone through quite the change from its initial appearance in Kirby GCN, back when Return to Dreamland was a mere baby. Water was also one of the most requested abilities to be conceptualized at the time, also appearing in Right Back At Ya. In Return and Return Deluxe, it's a phenomenal ability. It's really mobile and swift, which feels very responsive and easy to use with a wide variety of moves. Dash B sends you surfing on a wave while also giving you tons of invincibility. Fountain Hover may be slow, but it's super fun to use. Geyser and Rainbow Rain are super strong, but risky to pull off, and your normal run is a mini wave. This ability just slaps. Now you may ask, X-Sword, why is Ninja play so high? Oh brother, get ready. So to start, I think Ninja's possibly disliked for the same reason as Wing, being that people dislike the ability due to its difficulty. Ninja is hard to use starting off, and it's even more tough to master. I barely touched this ability in the original, as well as in the 3DS titles, due to its difficulty. Though playing it in Return Deluxe's new smooth engine made this ability much more tolerable. Ninja, as well as the abilities in number 4 and number 2 slots, were easily my most used abilities during my initial playthrough. One downside some players may think it has is its damage output, as Kunai, Dash Attack, Shock, and Quad Shock don't dish out as much damage as you'd probably want, but 3 moves that absolutely do are Blossom Storm, Airdrop, and Smoke Counter. Blossom Storm I'd say most of you are familiar with, and it deals moderate damage, plus you're invincible, but the other 2? Oh boy. Smoke Counter first requires you to either shield right before you get attacked, or press B when you're attacked. Once this happens, Kirby turns invincible, and when you press B, he reappears, causing an explosion that deals 26 damage, making it Ninja's second strongest move. Then there's Airdrop, which requires you to input a direction, plus B, on an enemy or a star, and Kirby suplexes it. This move deals a total of 160 damage on impact, as when Kirby rises and descends, he deals 50 damage on each hit. Then the projectile he sends after the suplex does 60 additional damage to the enemy. It's absurd. On top of these moves, Ninja has the properties of Sword and Cutter, and you can hang off walls. Don't sleep on Ninja. Give it a shot. Welcome to the top 5. If you know your Kirby, then you probably know what remains. So starting us off, we have Mecha. Mecha is one of 2 brand new additions to the ability roster in Return Deluxe, serving as a main marketing tool during the game's advertising campaign. Some may think that since I don't have Mecha in the second or first spot that I despise the ability, and originally I did have it higher, but it was swapped with number 2. Reality of it is, I love Mecha. It's in the top 5 for a reason, despite my complications with it. Mecha is jam-packed with an arsenal of moves that Kirby can use, which most if not all can combo into stronger variants of each other. You've got a 3-stage blaster, which you can store with shield, alongside a controllable yet weaker version, a dash that cancels into a fully charged blast, mortar shots that have the properties of fire, small shock bombs, 3 counters, a quick invincibility move, and the cherry on top is that he can properly hover, which I think may be faster than Wing, I'm not sure. So needless to say, Mecha is ridiculously stacked, though its biggest downfall is its damage, as most of these moves are relatively weak unless you spam them. Utilizing Mecha in the true arena will require you to spam full charge as much as you can, as that's the most damaging move in its kit. You can make Mecha work, but you'll be constantly switching move combinations to deal damage when there are other, stronger abilities that will give you an easier time. Fighter, where do I begin? It wouldn't surprise me if I ended up using Fighter more than every other ability in the game during my initial playthrough. Maybe besides number 2. I've always enjoyed playing as Fighter, but I don't think I've used it as much as I did in Return Deluxe than I did in any other Kirby game. When I first played the demo, I immediately noticed the difference in speed, which guaranteed my craving to use it more when the full game came out. But let me explain what I mean by speed. Not in terms of movement speed, rather move execution. To me, it appears that the speed of fighters' moves are faster to perform and use again. The downtime between using a move into your next move seems shorter. At least, to me it seems that way. The ability feels coherent and more responsive than it's ever been. Moves flow well into each other without much delay. It's a very strong ability if handled properly. Moves like the 3 Force Blasts deal from 24 to 42 damage, with the instant Mega Force Blast dealing 36 damage. The 3 throws deal 36, 45, and 52 damage respectively. And most of the other smaller moves in its kit deal a minimum of 18 damage, which is relatively stronger than most abilities. Fighter is undoubtedly an ability you should try if you haven't in previous titles, due to the damage alone, and the speed is an added bonus. Now, I don't really have a lot to talk about Hammer, but I hope that most of you who've played a Kirby game before can agree with me that it's an absolute classic and a well-loved ability. Hammer completely dominated the 2004 to 2011 era of Kirby for being one of the most popular and most used abilities in those games, due to its sheer damage output. Hammer is undeniably the best melee copy ability, both in mobility, weapon speed, and damage. The only downside to this ability is there aren't any movement options for Kirby, but it's not like you're going for movement with a close range melee weapon. Chargeable Hammer Flip from Star Allies was added to Return Deluxe, and makes Hammer so much better than it was in the original. If you're searching for an ability to use in the true arena, then you should use Hammer. However, the next two are probably better choices. In this world, there are two people, the ones who prefer mecha and the ones who prefer sand. I am a sand enthusiast first and foremost. Sand is one of 2 brand new additions to Return Deluxe, and wow is it ever strong. First impressions upon reveal, I wasn't too excited for this one, as mecha kinda stole the spotlight, but then I tried sand in the demo before launch, and was I ever surprised. Every move in Sand's kit combos into each other. Like, no word of a lie, you can string almost every move back into another move, plus the damage on some of these moves are ridiculously strong. First of all, you can spam 3 iterations of just pressing B. There's Sand Grab, which has the properties of Whip, Golem Smash, which has the properties of Stone and Hammer, a damn Sand Castle, a Sand Hurricane. Your shield you can hide in a sand pile, which has the same properties as stone. You can combo shield into reveal and then into sandball or even sandcastle. It's such a versatile ability with plenty of combo options. It's an unreasonably strong ability too in its damage. Considering you're able to spam a lot of these moves in rapid succession, on top of 3 moves that make you invincible, that's right, dash attack, sand grab, and shield all gain invincibility, it makes sand a must-use for the true arena. It basically carried me through my first run through, so I highly recommend it. Sand is the ultimate package. And finally, the number 1 spot and my all-time favorite copy ability, not only in Return Deluxe, but also in all of Kirby, is Spark. Immediately, some may criticize this as a pretty mediocre choice, as Spark's kit doesn't have much to offer in terms of variety, especially coming off of Sand just a moment ago, to which, yeah, I agree. However, I have been primarily using Spark, or as the OGs know it as Plasma, since probably Superstar Ultra, just like that DS era of Kirby. So the reason it's at number 1 is mainly due to personal bias. In the original game, I used Spark a lot, and it shows in footage I recorded for my retrospective. I'd mostly use it during boss fights though, but I'll get into that. The 3 main qualities of this ability, and the reason it's in this spot, is its design, damage, and uniqueness. Spark's design is without a doubt my favorite of any copy ability. I've always been a fan of electrical or lightning abilities in games. Spark's damage is one of the strongest in the game too. Its kit may not have many moves, but the ones it does have dishes out heavy damage in quick succession. Spark Arrow, Spark Laser, and Spark Wave deal 8, 18, and 40 damage respectively, with Spark Wave being the strongest move in the kit. But here's where Spark's uniqueness comes into play, as these 3 moves can be manually charged by either pressing any direction on the joystick in rapid succession, or by shaking the controller itself. That extra action to take advantage of the controller is what sets Spark apart from most, if not every other ability for me. By charging each Spark level, you can create a Spark barrier around Kirby that causes 8 damage on contact and 7 damage for each subsequent hit, as long as you keep the barrier up. Spark Barrier stays active as long as you keep performing those 2 actions, plus it penetrates enemies and walls. Spark is a fantastic offensive ability for boss fights and is essential to extra mode and the true arena due to its ability to clear out smaller enemies and allocate massive damage when spammed. The only exception in this is probably Sand if you want a hand in defense. But besides that, that's why Spark is my favorite copy ability in Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. And that concludes the tier list. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you made it to the end, then prove it by liking the video and commenting your favorite copy ability down below in the comments. It can be from any Kirby game if you want. Return Deluxe hosts a wide variety of abilities, with some fantastic and some not so fantastic. Either way, there's an ability for anybody, and there's one for anyone's preferred playstyle. These are my personal favorites, and you can feel free to agree or disagree. As for what's next on the channel, I don't really have a whole lot planned or enough to promise what's on the agenda, outside of one thing. Ever wonder why my channel's alias is Chibi Robo? My profile pic, the channel's banner, my outro? Some may think that's because Chibi Robo is probably a favorite game of mine. To which you'd be correct. My next video will answer that question in great detail, continuing an ongoing retrospective series of my favorite games of all time, with the past 2 episodes focusing on Sonic CD and Return to Dreamland. So if you haven't checked those out, then please do so. And if you're interested in this upcoming project of mine, then feel free to subscribe, as I'm aiming for that video to air before the end of the year. And with that, thank you for watching once again. This is Xroid64, signing off.